Hello, today we're going to be looking at Desmos. I know you guys love to learn about Desmos, and today we're going to be looking specifically at straight line graphs. And I know it's something very basic, but it's always something interesting to go back to the basics and have a look at it, especially on a graphing calculator like Desmos. So first things first, what is Desmos? Desmos is a graphing calculator, and really what that means is it lets you view graphs as they would be if you were able to plot every single point with an infinite number of points, and that's really cool. So when it comes to a straight line, we usually think about straight lines in the form of y equals mx plus c, but what does that really mean, and what does it look like? So let's just have a look at y equals 3x plus 9. In the case of y equals 3x plus 9, you can see that it's a straight line, and it goes on for infinite amount of place. As we keep scrolling out in Desmos, we can't see an end and we can't see a beginning, and the reason for that is if you consider it as x tends to infinity, y also tends to infinity. So that's an interesting property about any curve really that is continuous, that they have an infinite amount of points as long as it's not given by any specific domain. So another thing to look at are the 2 points that I've highlighted on the graph, the x and the y intercepts. For a straight line graph, such as y equals mx plus c, as you can see, when y equals 0, as in when we cross the x-axis, what we get is 3x equals minus 9, or x equals minus 3, which is what we see in this bit here. And let's say when x equals 0, we get y equals 0 plus 9, which is y equals 9, and that's what we see here. And what that really means is, when we generalize it, what we can find out about our graph using our formula or vice versa is the value of c based on the y-intercept. So in the case that c equals 10, the y-intercept is 10, and the reason for that is whenever x is 0, the term mx becomes 0, so y has to equal y has to equal c, so the y-intercept just happens to be the value of c. Now we'll consider the second value in our straight line graphs, m. What does m really mean? Well, m is actually the gradient of our graph, and for those of you who've been doing maths for a while, you know that gradient is all over everything. But how do we visualize this on a graph? Well, what we can see is, as we adjust the slider for m, we can see the curve, well, in this case, a line, shifting its steepness, and really that's what gradient means, how steep a line is. In this case, it's the change of y in terms of x, or in other words, the change in y over the change in x. And why is it that it becomes steeper? It's because as the gradient increases, the change in y is proportionately more than the change in x. So if you think about it, a smaller change in x is required for a much larger change in y, and therefore the line becomes steeper. If m were to tend to infinity, the line would theoretically become vertical, since you could expect almost 0 change in x needed to have an infinite change in y, which is what a vertical line represents. And of course, if you did the converse, if you did a 0 gradient, you'd have the opposite. So that's been straight lines on Desmos. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next time we're going to be looking at something a little bit juicier. This is a very short video, but next time we'll have a juicy one. We'll be looking at quadratics, and more importantly, how we can use Desmos to visualize them and explore them.